This is Metro Week. Our top story, what will new state leadership mean for Southern Arizona? We'll seek the Tucson area perspective. Plus, our Journalists Roundtable analyzes the week's news.
I think there are a lot of Republicans out there right now who are having reality checks because now they've got to live up to the campaign promises, and we haven't heard any specifics. Right now, to me, it's a big question mark. Doug Ducey on education, on the budget, on immigration. Okay, what's he going to do?
I'm Christopher Conover in for Andrea Kelly. Arizona began this week with a changing of the political guard, the inauguration of new statewide leaders at the Capitol.
I, Douglas A. Ducey, do solemnly swear.
I, Douglas A. Ducey, do solemnly swear.
I will support the Constitution of the United States.
I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And with that, Doug Ducey officially became the 23rd governor of Arizona. In the 20 or so minutes that followed his swearing-in, Ducey began to lay out where he wants to take the state over the next 4 years. He stayed close to campaign themes.
My first priority is simple. Put more opportunities and greater freedom within reach of all our citizens. It bears repeating that I have pledged to be a governor for all the people. Opportunity is just a platitude unless all Arizonans are included.
Pledges like that are particularly important in southern Arizona because job growth in Tucson is forecast to be at 1.8% in 2015. Growth in Phoenix is expected to be almost a full point more than that. Job growth is often tied to education. On Monday, Diane Douglas took the reins of Arizona's public education system.
I look forward to working with our governor, with President Biggs and Speaker-elect Gowan and our legislators to return control of education where it rightfully belongs, to Arizonans.
Superintendent Douglas met with the head of the Tucson Unified School District this week to discuss the future of minority classes in the area's largest school district. We'll have more on that during our Journalist Roundtable. Next, Andrea Kelly has an interview about what our new state leadership means for southern Arizona. She sat down with Leah Marquez Peterson, the president of the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Marquez Peterson campaigned for Governor Ducey and has been working with the new administration.
Ms. Marquez Peterson, you are on the transition team for Governor Doug Ducey. What are you telling him, or what is your role representing Southern Arizona on that team?
Now, I was honored to be selected by then Governor-elect Ducey to co-chair his subcommittee and his transition team on economic development, entrepreneurship, and trade, and I'm co-chairing that with Glenn Hammer of the Arizona Chamber. We've taken on a number of different departments, talking about boards and commissions all related to those areas, and it's been a very active holiday season if we've met with subcommittee members and worked through some of the different issues faced in those different departments. Specifically, the departments that we've been working on, and some are quasi-public-private certainly, are the Arizona Commerce Authority, the Arizona-Mexico Commission. We've been working on tourism as well as DES.
Those are all issues we've heard about from Southern Arizona government officials, some of the other organizations, businesses in town. So what's the central message that you're working on with those organizations?
I think the governor was really looking for some big ideas, ideas of transition. He certainly has talked about government efficiencies, really looking at the role of government in each of these different areas. I spent a lot of time working with key stakeholders in Southern Arizona, as I'm pretty engaged in the community, and talking to folks about what their expectations were of each of these various departments or organizations. It was good to get feedback, and I made sure to provide that to the transition committee and to the governor's team. We'll see as things still progress. He was just inaugurated just recently, so he's got a lot of work ahead of him, as well as his administration, his team, and putting department heads in place, as well as filling a lot of the boards and commissions. I think what's particularly important for Southern Arizona is that we have a voice at the Capitol, at the state legislature, and a lot of times that's done via these boards and commissions. So I'd spent time prior to the holidays encouraging people to apply. We needed more Southern Arizona applicants.
And you mean applicants for the jobs that the governor will be hiring for?
Both the jobs and for seats on boards and commissions. A lot of times the various boards and so on are in an advisory capacity to the different departments and to the governor's staff. So there are vacancies that occur throughout the year. I was out talking to our own chamber members as well as other business organizations about the importance of applying through the governor's transition website so that they could also make sure that their resume was seen, that their voice was heard from their particular industry or geographic area that they were representing.
And as you said, the governor just took office this week on Monday. So does the transition team that you sit on continue into the rest of January, some of this first term, or is it over now that he's in office?
No, for now, our work still continues. We've turned in reports at this point, and we're continuing to update those and capture data and conduct interviews and so on. So it's still been very active for us.
The Arizona-Mexico Commission you mentioned, and trade between the southern Arizona, the whole state actually, and Mexico is a huge issue for improving the economy and developing an economic relationship here. What specifics do you hope to see in the next term of governor and even in the legislature to improve economic development with Mexico?
You think you heard Governor Ducey, as he was campaigning, talk about the role and the importance of trade with Mexico. So I'd like to see, personally, a larger role for either that trade policy advisor or the Arizona-Mexico Commission within the governor's staff. Certainly that's a lot of the feedback I've received in southern Arizona. I think in southern Arizona, we really have an understanding of just that economic impact on Pima County and Cochise County and Santa Cruz County and so on. So this is certainly information that I'm bringing to the governor's transition team. And he gets that. He understands the importance of Mexico to our economy. At the inauguration on Monday, it was also wonderful to see Governor Padres of Sonora there in the front row next to our other former governors. And just to see that relationship grow and expand, I think is important. The other information that I think is not new news to a lot of us here is the image of Arizona in Mexico. And I think Governor Ducey is very aware of that, the perception of Arizona in light of some of the different legislative issues that came up. What can we do to overcome that, and what can we do to grow our connections in Mexico?
One of the issues facing the state as we head into this next legislative session is a projected budget deficit for next fiscal year, so the year that begins in July. We're looking at potentially $1 billion deficit of not enough revenue to cover our current expenses. How might that affect southern Arizona, and what are you saying to the administration to prepare for that, for those decisions, those cuts?
Yeah, I think in his inaugural speech that he gave on Monday, Governor Ducey also talked about the budget committee that had been put together the day he was elected, and I think they've been working hard at looking at government efficiencies and ways in which they can balance this budget. He's promised a balanced budget. I think he's hard at work at it now with his team. As a transition team, Glenn and I have specifically been focusing on the different areas, economic development, trade, and so on, that we focused on, realizing that what can we do to make each of those more efficient, make them more collaborative, work with private enterprise in their public roles and so on. So a lot of that analysis is being done now. What the impact on southern Arizona can be, I mean, I think time will tell. We don't know a lot of the details of that yet, but I know there are certainly a lot of concerns about what might happen in education specifically and some of the different programs and services provided. And it's that balancing act you play at keeping those services going and the important role they play for each of our different constituents in our communities, while also making sure it makes sense financially for the state. So this will be a very tough legislative session.
You're talking about economic development as a way to grow the state's revenue sources, but you brought up education, and that's another example of something that businesses can often cite when they're talking about whether to move somewhere, part of that economic development scheme. So are you hearing from school districts, school administrators, even local government administrators or the mayor about what Southern Arizona needs to say to its legislators or to the governor this year?
I think what I'm hearing now is just a lot of concern about where these budget cuts will, or the deficit, how that will impact different cuts to education in different areas. Certainly, as you study the budget, there are only certain areas the legislature has any kind of area that they can have an impact or make change. So that's top of mind, I know, for the universities, the community colleges, K through 12 and so on. He's got some very smart people involved in his transition committee, Lisa Graham-Keegan and others who are co-chairing that for him, and I think they'll be able to help him work through some of those tough decisions that need to be made, as well as his budget committee that he has in place.
And we're talking about cuts, but there's also a court-mandated expansion of education funding because of a lawsuit. So how often do you hear from businesses about how educated our workforce is. As president of the chamber, is that an issue that comes up?
Absolutely. So I hear quite often about the quality of applicants that are applying for jobs. What's interesting is, during our recent economic recession, people were laid off, companies shrunk, but we're in this point now in 2015 where people are starting to add back employees. And as they do so, we're talking to them about the importance of perhaps considering bilingual employees with our dependency on Sonoran tourists or trade with Mexico perhaps in the future. But in addition, they're talking about the challenges of finding qualified employees. So that's certainly top of mind. I think Pima Community College and Cochise College will play a major part of that also, in terms of technical training and so on, and certainly our University of Arizona. That's top of mind for a lot of our business owners in terms of how the U of A is graduating very qualified students and then how we retain them in our community.
And the U of A is also fighting for funding, and as you mentioned, there's only so many areas that can expand and contract in the state budget. How important is the University of Arizona to the businesses that you're trying to attract to this area?
The University of Arizona is critical, and you've seen quite an expansion of ASU. Certainly NAU plays a major role, but the University of Arizona with their the research that they provide, I've seen President Hart really making that effort to reach out into the community, engage with the business community. She's asking students to really each have that real-life experience, that internship, and so on, and I think that is an important role for each of our local businesses in engaging with the different departments and programs at the U of A. We need to spread and continue to spread that message at the state capitol of how important the University of Arizona is to the economy of Southern Arizona and really to the entire state.
Another issue that's coming up in local and state government this year is the fight in court right now about the expansion of the state's Medicaid program, the health insurance for the poorest residents in Arizona. We're not sure if that will continue in court at this point because the governor needs to make a decision about whether to defend it. But health insurance, health care, and whether people can afford that also affects our economy. Any other big issues that you see, in addition to those, on the horizon for Southern Arizona businesses and the Southern Arizona economy?
I think specific to Medicaid expansion, our chamber was supportive of that as we went through that in the session. I don't know what direction Governor Ducey may take, but beyond even the state and Medicaid, certainly at the federal level, the Affordable Care Act is top of mind to us. And in fact, we're hosting meetings on that throughout January and February.
What kind of meetings? What's the focus of those?
We've asked the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to come out and meet with us. There's been a real challenge in the rollout of the Affordable Care Program to small businesses, and even more in particular, Hispanic community. So they're visiting us in our January luncheon to meet with our businesses, one-on-one consulting, and talk about the program and how businesses can sign up. And I think that's important for our entire community.
Leah Marquez Peterson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And Christopher Conover will be right back with the Journalist Roundtable.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Brivetta. Next on Arizona Week, Doug Ducey sworn in as the state's 23rd governor.
Now our Journalist Roundtable. Joining me in the studio is my colleague Zach Ziegler of Arizona Public Media, Dan Scherer of the Green Valley News and Sahuarita Sun, and Thelma Grimes of Tucson Local Media. All of you, thank you for coming in on this first week of the new year for us. We've listened to Doug Ducey's speech, Governor Doug Ducey's speech earlier this week. We've seen Leah Marquez Peterson's comments on it. With all of his plans, they were fairly broad brush, the governor's plans this week. What do you think we will see here in Southern Arizona out of the new Ducey administration?
I think that's a great question. In fact, I look at this administration, I look at all the people who are just brought in. I think there are a lot of Republicans out there right now who are having reality checks because now they've got to live up to the campaign promises, and we haven't heard any specifics. Right now, to me, it's a big question mark. Doug Ducey on education, on the budget, on immigration, okay, what's he going to do? The budget question probably will be answered first, but that's a good question. What will it mean for Southern Arizona? I wish I had the answer to that.
And I think with that too, you've got a governor now who got elected based on his background in business. So everybody in business and economy is saying, okay, what is the golden answer here? How are you going to fix all of this? $100 billion, billion-dollar deficit and that kind of thing. And he's right. Where are the answers there with your background too?
And I believe that the last governor we had who said he was going to run the state of Arizona like a business was Fife Symington, who ended up having to resign after a fraud conviction. So let's hope he doesn't go down that road.
Well, and I think it's interesting. Governor Ducey at one point was CEO of Cold Stone Creamery, the head guy there, but that's a private sector job. This is public sector. I spoke with the Tax Research Association earlier, and we were speculating, has he had the aha moment yet where he's learned something that he didn't know on the campaign trail? And they were speculating that it may just be dealing with the public sector versus the private sector, though he was treasurer before he was governor.
Right, and I think it's a question of when will he run into that brick wall, because he will. But Arizona, as we all know, having been here a long time, is full of opportunity, and I don't feel like that we have really realized it yet. Right on the border, and so many opportunities with tourism, with business wanting to come here, our climate, you know, the 5 Cs. It's very real. I'm just waiting for that right person who can really help us take advantage of what we have here, because I think we all believe in it. Now it just has to happen.
That is really one thing that you can kind of hope for. You know, if there's one thing that cures any political ail, it seems it's money. And if he can start to get that economy back on track, he will look quite good for what he's doing from the office.
And that's like Dan brought up, you know, there's so many things to capitalize on. You've got solar, export, you know, all of that. If we just start looking at a way to capitalize on that, some of that means, though, in improving your transportation system, too, though.
We're all here in southern Arizona, but Dan, you specifically, the Green Valley area, anything border-wise hits your community before it hits those of us a little further north up I-19 and I-10. What are you hearing from elected officials down in your part of the county and the viewing area about what they expect? The legislative session starts on Monday. What do they expect?
Well, I spoke to Representative Rosana Gabaldon, who handles Legislative District 2. She lives in Saurita, and she says, you know, it's great that we have this $200 million renovation of the Mariposa Port of Entry. However, there's a small road from the port to I-19 that is just a huge bottleneck. We've been talking about it for a couple of years. We've been talking about it long before the port was completed, and she's saying she wants to put some pressure on ADOT to get that thing widened, because it doesn't matter how big the port is. If you can't get people to I-19, you're going to have a problem there.
And then that just kind of runs into the issue of what's on the other side, too. We can't do a whole lot about the road south of Mariposa.
That is a huge question. She brought that up also. And then putting more inspectors on the U.S. side to help get those trucks through there. I've been down there. I've toured it shortly before it was open. And I tell you what, it's a fantastic facility, a fantastic opportunity with the Deepwater Port in Guaymas. We now are poised to be able to take some business from Texas and from California, which is the goal. I think it can be done, but we have some big decisions to make here, and hopefully we can get some of that done during this session.
Thelma, talking business, you have Inside Tucson Business as one of your papers. The governor talks a lot about developing business and solving a lot of these budget problems by getting more revenue through more businesses coming in. You've watched governors before. This is something we've heard from other governors. Do you think this is a realistic idea given the climate and everything we have?
I think it can be done, absolutely, but I think there needs to be a plan in place, which right now is a little vague on what their actual plans are. And this week, we also talked to Senator Steve Smith, who just took the place of longtime Senator Al Melvin in District 9, and he brought up the need to decrease regulations in order to bring more businesses in and give them more opportunity to expand and that kind of thing. So that may be a direction they're looking at.
Did Senator Smith give any indication about, because of the tight budget this year, getting those things filed right away, or are we still too early? The legislative session doesn't officially begin, though we have seen bills filed at this point until Monday anyway.
I think that's what's interesting when you're talking to some of these, people who are taking new positions. I mean, like Steve Smith, he's been in the House of Representatives, so he's not new to the legislature, but you've got some new faces, and you've also got the new governor. I think they're a little hesitant to really say what they're going to do or what we can expect to see. Usually they're a lot more, I'm going to do this, this, and this. That I'm not seeing this year.
One of our big issues is going to be the budget. We are facing $1 billion shortfall in the next fiscal year, which is in fact right around the corner. It's this summer. Southern Arizona leaders often complain that we get the short end of the deal. Phoenix gets everything. We here in Southern Arizona don't get anything. As you have talked to, Dan, representatives in the southern part of Pima County, Thelma, as you've talked to others, your staffs have talked to others, are you hearing any hope that that may change with a new legislature and new administration in Phoenix?
I'm hearing that there's a lot of hope, but realistically speaking, it's pretty much you just got to be loud. And having lived up in the Phoenix area for a long time, yep, they control everything. And to come down here, I think I was a little startled to find out that Tucson wasn't lying. They are overlooked a lot. So it's going to mean getting strong legislators in there, and Sierra Vista has got a couple of them who are in leadership positions, and that could really help us out. So we'll see, but we have tons of issues down here that are actually quite different from the Phoenix area, so it's really just a matter of getting their attention.
You bring up Sierra Vista and leadership. He is still technically Speaker-elect, Representative David Gowan. He will be Speaker on Monday unless something incredibly politically surprising happens. That is good for Southern Arizona. The last time we had someone in that level of power was Tim Bee as Senate President, and that was not quite a decade ago, but it's been a while since we've had someone at that level of power from Southern Arizona. Right,
and with the redistricting, he now is over in Sierra Vista, but he at one point did cover Green Valley and Sahuarita, so we're confident that he knows our issues too. So we're glad for that. But again, the issues down here are very different than they are in the Phoenix area, so it's a question of getting their attention.
And it could be with that too, you got to remember, we have a lot of legislatures down here in Southern Arizona now that they see eye to eye on a lot of issues. So I think that could also help in maybe making their voice a little louder going forward.
The president this week was in Phoenix talking about housing. We'll get to that a little bit more in a second. But he also today hinted at yesterday, unveiled today a plan to make community colleges free as long as you keep your grades up. We heard from the chancellor locally at PCC, thinks it's a great idea. Have you all heard anything, PCC being the big community college here, but there are other community colleges. This sounds like, from a business standpoint, more educated workforce. Are you hearing anything yet about it, or is it too new?
I haven't heard a lot about it, but you got to remember the new chancellor of Pima College, he's really pushing these programs where it's direct-to-work programs, where you may not have to transfer to university, you know, mechanical, that kind of thing. So if you were to take this kind of program, I could see it really benefiting Southern Arizona residents.
I'm a huge proponent of the community college system, and I think it's terrific, but that the federal government would take on 75% of it and the state would take on 25% of it. Well, this is the same president who just a couple days ago encouraged people to not buy anything that you can't afford, and he might want to take his own advice. Right now, Arizona can't afford this. I love the idea, but if you want to talk about education costs that are out of control, let's look at the universities. Why don't you give us a break there? The community colleges, I still think, are doable for most students.
Let's stay with education. At the end of the last administration's term, John Huppenthal, the superintendent of public instruction, came out with a statement that TUSD, our largest district here in Southern Arizona, is in violation of state law with its minority education program. The TUSD superintendent sat down with Diane Douglas, the new superintendent, this week to talk about that violation. And afterwards, H.T. Sanchez, the TUSD superintendent, actually seemed pretty positive. Let's listen to what he had to say.
I was just extremely impressed by the state superintendent's desire to develop standards that recognize the contributions of Latino people in the state of Arizona as well as in the United States, and to have that information as part of the Arizona career and college standards.
Zach, this is an issue that dates back to superintendents of public instruction. Tom Horn, before he was Attorney General, was superintendent of public instruction, began this effort to get rid of Mexican American studies, eventually successfully at TUSD. It seems now change in administration, maybe cooler heads are prevailing a little bit.
The big thing you can take away from this is that H.T. Sanchez and Diane Douglas actually sat down and talked about it. That was one thing that Sanchez has talked about for a long time, is he couldn't get Huppenthal to sit down with him and talk about this and figure out how they could solve the solution and both come out of it happy. That was his main takeaway. That's what a lot of folks kind of see as the big news coming out of what's gone on in this so far, is the fact that there is a little less two sides butting heads and maybe some collaboration about to happen.
It's obviously still a work in progress, and we'll have more on this actually on the next edition of Metro Week. We'll really focus on this as this begins to play out. But Zach, let me turn back to you and change subjects. You did some reporting for us this week on the economic outlook, specifically job growth in southern Arizona for 2015. In a nutshell, it doesn't look very good.
Yeah, the word that I've not been able to escape when talking to experts about this is anemic. That's the one that keeps on getting thrown out. Sub 2% job growth is kind of the standard on this that we are seeing. Forecasts say Tucson could be about 1.8%. And it's growth in new fields. Hospitality, healthcare, trade, and utilities are areas that are expected to grow, whereas more traditional powerhouses such as construction and manufacturing here just have kind of continued to go down. Construction is starting to go up slightly, but we're talking about the difference between in 2006, I believe it was 28,000 people in southern Arizona and Tucson specifically worked in construction. Now we're going to see an uptick at the end of the year and almost get to 16,000. That's a big difference for that field. So now it's a matter of finding the people and getting the people trained into these fields, particularly healthcare fields. That's not the type of thing you walk off the street. You need education, and maybe if we do see something go on with these community colleges becoming free tuition colleges, that might help people get into those jobs.
One factor on the education part is to stress it's also important to get those kids to stay here once they get those degrees, which right now is not happening as much.
The numbers for Maricopa County in your reporting look more positive. They still aren't great, but they look more positive than for Pima County. Does that continue to feed what we were all just talking about, that whole Maricopa versus southern Arizona mentality?
It's kind of one of those lovely catch-22s of, well, why do people want to move their business or start a business or expand a business in Maricopa County? Well, because there's more there. And because there's more there, it just kind of grows and grows, whereas in Tucson, people are just kind of saying, well, there's nothing there, so no one's moving and locating here. That kind of becomes the self-perpetuating cycle. It's a matter of figuring out how to break that cycle to get Tucson to that more Phoenix-level growth, which Phoenix is forecast in 2015, I believe, to be around 2.6% job growth.
Thelma, this week, cover story inside Tucson businesses, Pima County's debate over hiring tobacco users. Where does all this come from? What's going on with that?
I think this is actually an interesting debate. I mean, healthcare costs are going up. You've got a ton of stuff going on with healthcare costs. So everybody, private entities, public entities, they're starting to look at how can we decrease those healthcare costs. One of those areas starting to be approached is cutting down. If you're smoking, we're going to ban smokers because that cuts down on our premiums. And Tucson Medical Center is doing that. Oro Valley Hospital announced last week they're going that direction, Northwest Medical Center. The difference there is they're private entities. Pima County taking this approach, they're a public entity.
And we've seen University of Arizona ban smoking and tobacco use on campus. It was kind of a soft rollout for the last semester, and they'll be ramping up the sanctions, I guess, as time goes by. Is Pima County's plan just smokers, or is it all tobacco users?
I think it's all tobacco users, and that's about 30% of the 7,200 employees there. And so I think it involves all of it. And then you have to take a nicotine test if you are a smoker, and premiums for yourself. Say you smoke and you're currently an employee, you're going to see a 30% increase in your premiums this year, 40% next year, 50% the following year. So they are taking a strong approach to, they are encouraging you not to smoke.
As we wrap this up, 1 minute, this is the 4th anniversary of the January 8th shooting. This week, 4 years on, where are we in Pima County, southern Arizona? It was such a big deal. Has anything changed? And we only have about a minute left.
I think a lot of people are have not forgotten, which I think is number one, is most important. We have an event in Green Valley, and Ron Barber will be there, and we're glad for that. I think that it's important too, as the term says, look beyond. And Gabby Giffords has certainly taken up the battle against guns funds, things like that. So we're not going to forget, and I think that speaks well of the community.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us this first news week, if you will, of the year. And I'm sure we'll be seeing more of you and talking about these subjects more as the year goes on. That is it for this edition of Metro Week. More on the week's news, including stories that aired on NPR 89.1. Go to our website. Now Arizona Week, with more analysis of the first week of the Ducey administration and a look at what the president's speech on housing in Phoenix means for Arizona's economy.